In fact, that was one game, so he did hold him off for a game. Let me give you my list. My list looks like this. I do have Peyton Manning in the 5th spot. I think he's one of the great players in SEC history. Danny Werfel was on there. I've got him in my 4th spot. I think he was a great, great player. Bo Jackson is a guy that I thought had maybe more ability than just about anybody. Great, great ability, Mike. A lot of things happened. Bo wasn't sure what he wanted to play and then got injured at the pro level. I thought Pete Maravich, I didn't get to see him play much. I'm like 1 year older than you, but I saw him play a little bit as a kid, but I didn't see him play enough. And Herschel Walker, without question, is the best college football player I ever saw, maybe the best college athlete I ever saw. I think Herschel Walker changed games. It's rare in college sports to see a game where it looks like a man's playing with boys. Truly, Herschel Walker, it looked comical even his freshman year.
By the way, he must measure age in dog years or something. But Herschel Walker, to me, wasn't, if you're talking best pure athlete,
right,
wasn't a better athlete than Bo Jackson. Herschel was a phenomenal athlete. People forget how fast he was. He's Olympic caliber as a sprinter. But Bo was more of a diverse guy. I picked Danny Werfel, though, just because of his statistics, his performance on the field. He wasn't the greatest athlete. He'd never line up against these guys. You'd never pick him first in your pickup basketball game like you would with a lot of these other guys. But we have a lot of similarity there. I want to see how Peyton Manning does on the baseball field, though. Then you can start picking on Todd Helton if you tell me that Peyton Manning can hit the curveball.
I was a student at Florida when Herschel Walker was a freshman. I told everybody in the stadium he could run on all these other defenses. He wouldn't run on the Gator defense. On the 3rd play, he went 78 yards, and I've hated him ever since, but I'm giving him his due. That's how good Herschel Walker is. All right, that's our look at the SEC coaches and the SEC players who are the best of all time. What we haven't told you yet is who is the best SEC team of all time. That's coming up right after this.
Stay tuned. Things are just heating up on the 1010XL Showdown presented by Florida Telco.
S.E.C. football school of all time has got to be Alabama.
I'll go back with my Gators, and I love them, especially during the years when Spurrier was there.
Alabama. Florida. I'll go with Florida. I knew that was going.
Heart tells me to go with Florida Gators, but I really need to go with Alabama Crimson Tide.
I think you could go all time. You got to go Alabama. They got the most national titles ever.
University of Florida. There we go.
Florida Gators.
Might have to say Alabama.
University of Georgia Bulldogs.
That guy's a Georgia fan. That's what I figured out. I love the Georgia guy.
A lot of passion.
The Georgia guy's great. All right, so who do we think are the best teams of all time? Mike and I will both debate that. Mike, I'll go first here. A lot of great teams in SEC history in many sports. I'm going to take Kentucky basketball. Surprised you a little bit, didn't I?
Shocks me.
I'm taking Kentucky basketball, and here's why. Number one, I do think they set the standard in the Southeastern Conference, and really were the only team in the SEC for many, many years. While the ACC had great teams in North Carolina and Duke and others, the SEC had nothing. Kentucky set the standard, 7 national championships, but what stands out even more is they're still the standard. Yes, Florida is the team that won the last 2 national championships, and Billy Donovan's right there with them. But with Billy Gillispie in place, Kentucky will still be the standard. Florida was great at football, but they're not necessarily the only standard. There's some good teams. Alabama was great at football, but they're not the standard anymore. Kentucky was then. Kentucky is now. Give me the bluegrass states. What I want.
Are you
That's
kidding
what
me?
I want.
Did I hear you say they're still the standard? How many titles in a row does Billy Donovan have to win before Florida is the standard in college basketball? Now, that doesn't mean they're the greatest program of all time. We're talking about a single sport, and while I said Bear Bryant isn't the greatest coach because I think Spurrier could have done more with different groups of players, clearly 12 is greater than 7. 12 national championships for Bama football. It's unquestioned what the greatest program in the history of the SEC is. I agree with the majority of the folks in the shout-out. Bama football, clearly number 1. Look at the All-Americans. Look at the 21 SEC championships and the 12 national titles. Once again, count them up. The numbers don't lie. Bama football over Kentucky basketball in a walk.
When you were dogging Bear Bryant in the first segment, somebody called you in between, didn't they? Tell me the truth. You got a phone call, didn't you?
The Alabama Mafia were
I
not
know
particularly happy
they did.
with
I
me,
know
all
they
right?
did. Kentucky basketball, Alabama football, great programs in the SEC, and the SEC's had some great programs. Let's debate some other ones. What about Florida basketball? Mike, I've always believed that the sign of a great coach and a great program is can you do it, can you turn cycles and do it again? In 2000, he went to the final game. That was his first recruiting class. So I said, okay, let's see if this cat can do it again. Those guys all left. This new group came in, and they went back to the Final Four and won 2 championships. That may be as impressive an accomplishment over a 10-year period as anybody's had in that league.
Well, really, if you look right now, what he's done, Billy Donovan, in winning back-to-back national basketball titles is so rare historically in college basketball for any conference, any program, that certainly Florida deserves a mention. But they've got a pretty vacant past in terms of postseason honors prior to the Billy Donovan era. I know they had some success with Lon Kruger. It's not a storied tradition. Florida's getting there. Billy Donovan, in electing to stay, I think has sent a great message to the future recruiting classes that they can come and be a part of something that may one day rival Kentucky basketball.
It's certainly a special program now. And when you talk about football, here's the problem the S.E.C. has in football. To be one of the most dominant programs in the country now is going to be hard in that league. Do you realize between Alabama's national title in '92, Tennessee's national title in '98, Florida's in '96 and the most recent one, LSU's title in the early 2000s, Auburn had an undefeated season and should have had a national title. All those programs, I almost think they keep each other from being as dominant as maybe an Ohio State or certainly a Southern Cal can be. I think it's going to be hard for the S.E.C. to have the great football program because there's so doggone many of them.
Oh, there's no question about it, and you're helping me argue an earlier point. That's why it was so impressive what Steve Spurrier was able to do in that era. There are so many top-caliber football programs, but again, like Billy Donovan on the basketball side, certainly Urban Meyer's got the opportunity on the football side when you see where recruiting is headed. And if he sticks around at the University of Florida, I think everyone wants to see what he can do with his players, his offense, and really feel that it's his team completely for the first time as they move forward, trying to defend that national championship. It's going to be an uphill climb to win back-to-back, but really, who's got a brighter future? Maybe LSU over the next 5 to 10 years.
Mike, this will be the year to get Florida. You better get them this year because those two great recruits. Urban Meyer's first class was not a great recruiting class. Most of those guys are gone. Lewis Murphy's still there, a receiver. Most of those guys are gone. But the last two were spectacular classes. You better get them now. I agree with you on LSU. LSU's got all this talent, but there's some debate as to whether or not Les Miles can coach them. I think that's really the storyline there. Those two programs are clearly the two kind of poster children right now in the S.E.C.
When we talk about individual sports, obviously football and basketball dominate, but when you look at overall athletic programs, let's give some credit to LSU. Right. 40 national titles across a variety of programs. We don't sit here and follow the Sears Director Cup standings on a week-to-week basis like we do the college football and basketball polls. In Arkansas, if you take in some of their titles from the Southwest Conference before they joined the S.E.C., they're over 40 as well. So as an overall athletic endeavor, Arkansas, LSU are right up there with the best of them in the country.
I agree with you. Great programs. And still, Florida has won the S.E.C. All-Sports Trophy 10 of the last 11 years. That tells you how good a program the Gators and Jeremy Foley have going. All right, we'll take this one final time out. When we come back, we'll wrap up our S.E.C. show right after this, so stick around.
Who will be left standing after this round on the 1010XL Showdown presented by Florida Telco?
Almost out of time on 1010XL Showdown. Frank Frangie with Mike the Gator Dempsey. The Spurrier, Werfel, and Bama football, your greatest ever.
Objective is what that is. I'm not a homer when it comes to picking them. Look, Steve Spurrier, I told you, I thought in many different eras would have been an innovator, would have been a guy that could have taken your players and beat you with them himself. Danny Werfel, to me, just one of the greatest college performers I've ever seen. Not the best pure athlete, but a performer. And Alabama football, unquestionably to me, with the 12 national championships, I think that's how you measure a program, not necessarily a head coach or an individual group of players. Bama football is number one.
If you hadn't have gone to Bama football because of your disrespect for the Bear, I was going to do the last segment in the Houndstooth hat.
Did I have to wear orange and blue next show is the question.
Did. Herschel Walker, I've got great respect for Herschel. I really do think Herschel Walker's the best player I ever saw in any amateur athletics. And Kentucky basketball, still the standard. And keep an eye on this cat, Billy Gillespie. Now, I'm just telling you.
Still the standard.
Billy Gillespie. You made a good point. How many more titles they have to win? Okay. One more title,
right,
and I'll give you the standard.
Your first one, Billy.
But I'll certainly do that. It's been fun talking S.E.C. Best conference in football?
Oh, clearly. I think that's the thing. It's continuing to put out fantastic football and basketball. It's at the top of the heap right now in both, and you see that with the amount of guys going to the pros. You see the national championships, and that tells the tale.
All right. That is our program. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll do it every week in the same time slot right here on ESPN2. We hope you'll be watching. For Mike Dempsey, I'm Frank Frangie. So long, everybody.